So let's say you've taken a high dive into the world of the paranormal and occult practices. You're blown away by what some would claim to be forbidden knowledge of the dark arts and find that you're enriching your understanding of this mysterious and taboo world. You're having contact with entities of questionable natures and origins, practicing what some would call magic, removing the veil that separates the physical and spiritual. However, now you've run into a problem. You might have dove a little too deep into this world, and now things are coming through with bad intentions. Or worse, you've made someone jealous or mad, and they want to place a hex on you to teach you some sort of lesson. If you can't tell by now what I'm getting at, it is that the paranormal world and the occult in general has ways of drawing you in, mesmerizing you, but also leaving you open to harm if you're not careful. Enter now Melinda Kay Lyons, an alleged psychic medium, witch, and astral exorcist who has written a book which offers ways to protect yourself from spiritual harm. I'm Melvin, and it's finally time to review Psychic Defense Against Dark Forces. Guys, I'm going to be straight up with you. It's so much here that I can't possibly go over it all in a single review unless you want it to be like 2 hours long. That's why I'll be doing this review in parts with a live stream going over some of the content mentioned in the review afterwards. And I will be doing several podcasts speaking with occultists, going over some of the information so you can get your takes from people with years of experience in the field. With that out of the way, let's get into this review thing. Psychic Defense has 9 chapters and 294 pages. And sadly, it doesn't have chapter art, which I'm a little bummed about. One thing I will always give credit to Melinda for is being a good artist and having a good eye for art. However, saying that, unlike the other 2 books, I find myself disliking the cover art. I just feel that it doesn't fit the topic of the book. When I see this cover art, it makes me think I'm going to go into a fantasy story. A feeling you don't want to have when diving into something of serious nature. The font is also something I found myself not caring for very much. It should have been one size bigger and something more standard. The font used in Psychic Defense started to hurt my eyes after long periods of reading, which is something that didn't occur when I read the other books by Melinda. Also, for some reason, the letter U looks like the letter V to me in this font. But maybe that's just me. This font strikes me as being better suited for a fantasy narrative and would be perfect for portraying a fairy or something whimsical speaking. The book also has a glossy finish and not a matte finish like Melinda's other 2 books, which I also dislike. Mind you, this is all personal preference and has no true bearing on anything. Something that sticks out, however, is on the cover of the book, Melinda calling herself world-renowned. Not only is this just not true, it comes off as misleading, arrogant, and a tad delusional. I know that Melinda likes titles, but it's really odd to call oneself world-renowned. Upon reading, I noticed immediately that Melinda's grammar has improved immensely. I give her nothing but praise for that. There are some minor grammatical errors, but they're not big enough to point out. Well, with the exception of one. She, for some reason, has transmute as 2 separate words at least 4 times throughout the book. It makes me wonder if she actually understands what transmutation is. She doesn't mention its association with alchemy or what it stems from. I also have another reason for bringing this word up, which you'll find out later. Now, even before reading the first chapter of the book, the introduction pretty much sets the mood for what to expect. And there is a certain part of the introduction that just says it all. Within every religion, there is conflict between good and evil. All spiritual practices, in some form or another, harness the respect and understanding that there is light and dark energy, triggering the human conscience in the realm of the decision through choice and consequence, depending upon one's mortal journey, will lead one to a utopia or to the underworld to be tortured by demons for all eternity by a God that ever so loved you. The same religions that speak of angels that save those who ask for their divine guidance, healing, and protection speak of devils that rain on the parade of leading humanity down a road to self-destruction through temptation and influence. Thousands of years before Christianity came into being, other civilizations passed down this fundamental spiritual truth. Some, to name a few, were ancient Egyptian, Babylonian, Sumerian, Mayan, Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, and others throughout history that have carried these traditional beliefs to our modern day. Did you catch that? Let me read over some of this again for those of you who might have missed it. Thousands of years before Christianity came into being, other civilizations passed down this fundamental spiritual truth. Some, to name a few, were ancient Egyptian, Babylonian, Sumerian, Mayan, Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam. I know you caught it this time. Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, and Islam are religions. You could say that they're part of a civilization, but she didn't say that. She specifically states these are civilizations. I really don't know what she was trying to get at here. On top of that, of the three Abrahamic religions mentioned, Islam is the youngest, coming after Christianity. This is pretty common knowledge, and she supposedly speaks with angels. So how exactly she doesn't know this, or the difference between civilizations and religions, is beyond me. So now, thanks to this introduction, I'm expecting a jumbled up mess of misinformation with Melinda's odd takes added in. Going into the first couple of chapters of the book, I thought I would be greeted with information pertaining to psychic defense. You know, the name and theme of the book. Instead, we're greeted by exaggerations, fear-mongering, delusions, and weird social takes. The best way to describe the first two chapters of Psychic Defense is that of a diary of someone who is bitter that they've not been heard or recognized. It's quite off-putting, and a good portion of it is pointless rambling along with repeating some far-right political ideology. Why is political ideology in a book that's supposed to teach you protection from bad things that go bump in the night? I have no freaking idea. But, according to Melinda, is to show toxic groups, movements, and cults. This probably could have been left out, especially when things like this are said. The Black Lives Matter movement is toxic and promotes terrorism beyond repair. These protesters did riot entire towns, homes, and people's lives. I witnessed some of the victims who shared how they lost family members caught in the crossfire of the mindless destruction. Black lives do matter without question, but a movement that exhibits and supports only one type of race causes diversity. One should be reminded of the notorious Adolf Hitler, who proclaimed his social justice movement to reparations. The same link connects the same toxic mentality that infested millions of minds to kill millions of innocent men, women, and children. When a movement focuses solely on race, one will soon be racing to erase a race. The moment Black Lives Matter members raised their fists into the air, all I heard was the word Hitler. As much as one wouldn't want history to repeat itself, the truth remains that when you begin to erase history, you are destined to repeat it. And that's just what Black Lives Matter has attempted to do. Change history entirely instead of focusing on the facts. Okay, she compared Black Lives Matters to terrorists and threw in freaking Hitler for good measure. While I'm not a supporter of Black Lives Matters for various reasons, and it's a stupid name, the point of the movement was never about supporting one race over another. It was about bringing recognition to the plight of minorities when dealing with law enforcement, and basically saying, how can all lives matter when Black lives don't? It's a pretty simple message that most people can comprehend. Not super psychic, apparently. Speaking of comprehension, I think this is something Melinda lacks. After reading this book several times over to really take it all in, I noticed Melinda seems to take things at face value. It's either right or left, good or evil. No other directions, no in-betweens, and that's a problem for someone claiming to be spiritually aware and advanced. She comes off very narrow-minded, and her way is the right way and the only way, while everyone else is being manipulated by demons, or they're just not as advanced as she is. She has quite the hate boner for Satanism as well. Here's a small part of what she says. Satanism is for those that cannot express empathy whatsoever. Satanism, to the core, is the exact demonic expression and retaliation against anything good, loving, positive, and just. Satanism, in plain language, is the devil's religion and continues to reign in deceiving millions of people every day. The more an individual exposes themselves with complete vulnerability to Satanism, the energy exchange they will receive from the devils and demons begin to intertwine with theirs. Satanists sadly don't know this when it happens because their third eye is often closed or blocked from the demon. After all, the devil wants to take complete control of the person's psychic abilities. The more the demon has complete control of the person physically, the more they're capable of taking full control of the person mentally, physically, and emotionally. This can lead to depression, anger tendencies, hostility, mindless hatred, aggressiveness, manic episodes, bipolar disorder, sleep paralysis, massive energy drainage, suicidal thoughts, and thoughts of hurting others. That's bold of her to just assume someone is under the influence of a demon because they choose a different path. It's like she doesn't understand people are unique and driven by their own desires to do things in a way that makes sense to them. Also, it appears she's taken the Satan and Satanism literally. She's pushing a lot of Christian talking points in regards to Satanism, despite her saying she's not a Christian. Some other talking points included the satanic panic, which was mostly a cultural scapegoat, nothing new there, since we have examples of this from the 1500s and the 1600s, where over 80,000 Europeans were sentenced to death for being witches. This was in large part thanks to the Malleus Maleficarum. I know I butchered that name, but we're going to go with it anyway. And in the 80s, it was over 12,000 cases reported of satanic ritual abuse, all of which were unsubstantiated. Ricky Casso is brought up. He wasn't a Satanist, and his friends even said he never took part in or orchestrated satanic rituals. And even the counselor who was treating him at the time said he wasn't a Satanist. Ricky Kasso was also part of a group called the Knights of the Black Circle, which was a group of friends who sold drugs and was incorrectly reported by the media to be a satanic group. And here Melinda is repeating misinformation. The guy was called the Acid King for a reason, and it had nothing to do with Satanism. While reading this part of the book, Melinda also mentions necromancy. It all started when Kasso began experimenting with drugs like marijuana and hashish, but quickly he escalated to the addiction to LSD and PCP. It didn't take Kasso long before diving into the occult and Satanism. He began digging into old graveyards, allegedly searching for an Indian skeleton he intended to steal. When I researched this, it immediately reminded me of necromancy, the darkest form of satanic workings on dark magic an individual could ever go. Necromancy is essentially the workings of magic with a human or animal corpse to do black magic with, devils and demons or other negatively charged deities. Once a person chooses to develop an immense interest in working with the corpse, it's only a matter of time before they're completely involved with primarily evil forces. No, that's not what necromancy is. Simply put, necromancy is the communication with the dead in order to gain information on future events, guidance, or other type of knowledge. Necromancy is a form of divination found in witchcraft, and it's been around far longer than Satanism. So why the heck is she calling it satanic workings? It makes absolutely no sense, and I question whatever research she did because it's as backwards as she is. Melinda also goes in to talk about Charles Manson and Danielle Hussein. It becomes clear Melinda is using polarizing figures to push a narrative and also fearmonger. Even though Charles Manson wasn't a Satanist, she just throws a little speculation in there anyway. Without enough evidence, it's hard to say whether Charles Manson himself was a devout Satanist, nor did he ever admit that he was. However, it's safe to say that it's indeed questionable and remarkably possible when taking attention to the cult itself and its evil goals through the seemingly ritualistic killings. So, to be fair, I cannot outright say that Charles Manson or the Manson family were Satanists, but it begs the question. If we asked them today, what would their answer be? No? I mean, this is just pushing a narrative and going back to the good, bad way of seeing things. Everything bad is demons and dark entities. Everything good is angels and light entities. When in truth, people do crazy things and influence from entities, regardless of what they are, isn't needed. This is just plain old fear-mongering. Melinda also goes into talk about Luciferianism and demonolatry, once again talking about things she doesn't truly comprehend and trying to paint a picture of them being evil. Melinda even mentions and shares messages from a person on YouTube who sent a devil spirit to mess with her. Now, I actually saw this play out live, and to me, this event exposed Melinda as being delusional more than what was already exposed. The person who sent the devil was Coriander Yander, who, from what I can tell, is involved in the occult, and took offense at something Melinda said. Now, Melinda claims she was attacked and it took archangels to protect her, the same story we hear time and time again from her. She shows messages from Coriander as proof. However, Coriander responded to Melinda saying she did no such thing and she was just trolling. Which, if you saw and listened to Coriander, you could tell right away she was trolling and did nothing. Ultimately, the videos Coriander made trolling Melinda were taken down, But I did find the post on Reddit from Coriander herself saying she was trolling. While Coriander has some issues herself, this has become a case of credibility, and I believe Coriander over Melinda. Going by this book alone, Melinda has shown to share misinformation, exaggeration, and appears to have an agenda. Her credibility was shaky before, and this book doesn't help it get any better. Melinda's biases and lack of understanding truly shows when she shares information on black magic wielders. Black magic is one of the worst types of psychic attacks inflicted and wielded by those in the dark craft. There are 3 types of magic: white, gray, and black. White magic is primarily a positive energy force used by a witch or wizard to do good. White magic is used with the karmic understanding that what one sends out will receive in return 3 times. White witchcraft often aligns with healing the sick, helping others, and bringing harmony in all things. Gray magic, also known as neutral magic, works with good or evil intentions and finds a balanced consistency that allows the witch or wizard to harmonize without karmic damage. Neutral witches have a grounded understanding that all things in life, both good and evil, light and dark, can be used positively or negatively in a neutral sense. In respect to this universal balance of all that is energy, the witch doesn't receive karma for excellent or hostile intentions that are done based on one's judgment of what is justice, not revenge. Magic is essentially negative in terms of evil, intended to commit harmful outcomes to others and dominate situations unfairly. Demons and devils harness their powers in black magic, which mainly causes a living human to become inhumane to those around them. Black magic primarily is where the black witch or wizard works with demons and devils to complete their spells, curses, hexes, and potions with the assistance of descended realms. What? No. No. And the thing with white magic, she mentioned what you put out comes back 3 times. That's the rule of 3 from Wicca. And that centers around all magic, whether it's positive, negative, black, white, gray, green, blue, purple, whatever. The rule of 3 is you put it out, it comes back 3 times. So you put out positive, you get positive. Put out negative, you get negative. You want to be a horn dog, you get horn dogs. So she has no idea what she's talking about. And with black magic, we can see this more so like destruction. The best way of viewing it is destruction, preservation, creation. It's a cycle. It's not evil. It's not bad. It depends on the person's intentions. And it's interesting I'm saying that because immediately after she says all this malarkey about white, black, gray magic, she says this. Granted, every witch or wizard will have their own set of understandings in witchcraft, but that's the basics. Magic is neither good nor evil, but it's determined by the heart of the witch or wizard. When a caster chooses to align themselves in the dark realm of magic, they will find only hateful and aggressive means of getting whatever it is they want. Black magic casters suffer in the sense of impatience, for the ideology is to use their powers for evil with the sole intention of taking and destroying whatever they want. I wish this weren't true, but it is. And not only is that true, but it requires a great sense of awareness to become alert to the warning signs when possible in the presence of a dark. So there's some confusion here. On one hand, she's saying magic is magic and the names white, gray, black, etc. don't matter. But then she goes in on the aligning with the dark realm of magic and making baseless accusations. So, are you trying to say that magic is absolutely blank and it's the intent? Or are you saying, no, 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 magic is separate and there is dark, evil magic and demons and devils or whatever you call them are associated with that and it's just evil from the get-go? I don't know. It's confusing. From all the witches and occultists I've consulted with, they've all said the same thing. Melinda's talking from her butt. They've also added, it's the intent of the person that matters. Magic is shapeless and the caster is the one to shape this energy into whatever they will it to be. This feels like Melinda getting caught up in names and not understanding what she's talking about, which par for the course, and also throwing in her own delusions and whatever it was she saw on TV or an anime that's influencing her thought process. Her biases on anything called dark is on full blast, and I just can't take her seriously, and neither should the reader. The information being given out on how black magic and people who consider themselves black magicians is borderline dangerous and just straight up ignorant. Melinda definitely needs to go back to the basics and perhaps learn under someone who has experience with witchcraft and spells, or at the very least understand that white doesn't equate to being good and dark bad. Good Lord, could you imagine her at an NBA game? Whew, she'd be sweating bullets. Melinda again talks about necromancy and further shows she has no idea what she's talking about. Surprise, surprise, right? When dabbling in black magic, there are places where even most dark casters won't dare tread, and that's necromancy. Necromancy, as explained earlier, is a form of magic that deals specifically with the corpses of humans and animals. A necromancer often won't even realize that's exactly what they're doing until they're completely immersed in it. It can start small, like killing an insect for the sake of one spell, but soon they begin to kill animals to even grave robbing. When I refer to the killing of life as an example of necromancy, it must be noted that it can include murder or sacrifice in some form or another. Not always will the sacrifice be the case, but it does align within sacrificial means for their spells to work. A necromancer typically will commit grave robbing at an abandoned graveyard or an unmarked grave they discovered and use the skeleton remains to place at an altar for future incantations. Necromancy isn't as common as a sacrifice, but if one were to discover a skull on another's altar, it would be wise to assume where, why, and how they got it. I again have to say, this isn't what necromancy is or how it works. I truly don't know where she is getting any of this from, but it's going to poison and mislead people who are truly interested in topics like these and make them the laughing stock. She's taking the sacrificial aspects of necromancy way too literally and one-dimensionally, which at this point it should be expected. I don't know why I expect otherwise, but it should be expected. A sacrifice isn't always taking the life of something living. It could be sacrificing blood or hair, not taking a life. Plus, necromancers were known for using sympathetic magic, something Melinda doesn't even mention. Funny enough, she doesn't mention mediumship. Some necromancers use ventriloquist dummies to communicate. Some would use pendulums, and in John Dee's case, to speak with angels, he used Edward Kelly. Wait a second. Melinda is allegedly a medium, and she allegedly communicates with angels and spirits. So, wouldn't that mean she's a practitioner of necromancy? Oh no. That means she's doing dark, evil magic. According to herself, anyway. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? That's why her saying what she did about black magic makes no sense, unless she's everything she claims practitioners of black magic to be. Which I'm sure she'll deny, which would mean it's something fundamentally flawed in the information she's sharing and what she believes. And the information she's only sharing seems to be cherry picked, and once again with too much focus on good versus evil. We see this line of thinking expand to deities as well, especially those associated with the left-hand path. Melinda brings up Baphomet. Baphomet's origins are hard to trace, but he's one of the most well-known and recognized deities in the occult world. So it should come as no surprise that Melinda has had a run-in with it. I've met Baphomet. He's one of the eviler devils I've not only encountered, but have been attacked by as well. Baphomet isn't some misunderstood pagan deity like the Greek god Pan. Yes, this particular devil does indeed have hooves and horns, but never permit yourself to be fooled by these authors or Aleister Crowley's misinformation. These people are nothing different than denominators who work with devils like Baphomet and reign in the temporary coin they receive in profiting from Baphomet's name, in my professional opinion. It's utterly despicable just how vile these individuals can write something so misleading. Each time I read these types of authors' works, it gets under my skin. My personal and spiritual opinion is that work like Aleister Crowley isn't just toxic, but will invite Baphomet into your home and space. The more frightening reality is there are authors who will encourage possession to take Baphomet into your aura like one would accept energy of the universe. This information is not only inherently metaphysically dangerous, but is soulfully fatal. Some of that can actually be applied to Melinda. And like most things Melinda, this just isn't believable, and I don't understand why she's not going into details about Baphomet if she's met him. She claims he has hooves and horns, but what else? Why not share that Baphomet isn't this deity's original name, and more importantly, the image associated with it isn't what the Knights Templars originally described? The image we associate with Baphomet came about in the 1800s, created by Eliphas Levi, and is believed to be inspired by the Egyptian ram god and incoming Melvin about to butcher a name, Benmedjed, close enough. Even though she mentions Aleister Crowley, she doesn't mention how he was the one who associated Baphomet with Satan, but in the sense of it meaning repressed knowledge and worship in secret. And in 1966 is when the Church of Satan used the image of Baphomet as its sigil. But like I said earlier, Melinda only shares a part of the story, and it's very cherry-picked to push her narrative. So, after reading more of Psychic Defense, I've come to the belief that Melinda just can't grasp things that are abstract, symbolic, and not spelt out in front of her. She takes everything literally. An example of this being soul dualism. Soul dualism is a belief that we have more than one soul, but ultimately we have a true soul that departs with the spiritual body as the physical body passes away. Soul dualism can be found throughout parts of Southeast Asia, China, where it's called Hun and Po, and even ancient Egypt, where it's believed the soul was divided into 5 parts. Here's what Melinda has to say about this. Some witches and psychics will also teach that each human has more than one soul. I've been working with angelic beings for years and have seen some of the worst kinds of levels of horror you can grossly imagine. I don't claim to know everything. Yeah, you better not claim to. But one thing I definitely know. You only have one soul. Archangel Michael and many other deities have confirmed that humans have only one soul. I'm curious who these other deities were who conversed with her alongside Archangel Michael. I have a sneaky suspicion the only thing she's communicating with are the voices in her head, and they're not coming from divine or spiritual places. And I think what she says here is absolutely hilarious. These enlightened witches often teach within the same psychic understandings, but then twist it to fit their demonic narrative. Including Baphomet into their teachings flatly baffles me. It's equally exceedingly difficult to understand how the people trusting this work don't see these signs, but that's precisely how convincing the devil is when he gets another one of his puppets to do his job. Demonic entities and devils work tirelessly with humanity, especially in the spiritual community. It's so easy to become duped into another con by these wicked agendas, and it's paramount in establishing between universal truths, understanding, and precise manipulation and brainwashing. Because that's what this is. It's another form of New Age brainwashing that gives the New Age a lousy name. Willfully aligning the new generation is one thing, but when you place demons into the mix, it's no longer New Age, it's satanic and demonic. It's essential to pay very close attention to what a person in the psychic and occult world is telling you, because as Hagrid said, not all wizards are good. Some people will appear beneficial like those previously mentioned, and many others out there will lie to your face. Oh, Melinda. Melinda's lack of self-awareness is next level amazing. Literally what she says there can be applied to her. Just substitute demons for angels. She is literally duping and conning people and pushing her own agenda under the guise of her trying to enlighten a few people who take her seriously, fighting a non-existent spiritual war and literally condemning anyone who goes against the grain of what she believes. While Melinda claims not to be a Christian, she's certainly pushing Christian talking points along with far-right ideologies. Couple that with her own ignorance, lack of comprehension, inflated ego, and quite possibly isolation from society, then we get the first couple of chapters of Psychic Defense. So far, this has not been an easy read, and not because it's some complex teachings. It's because a lot of the information so far has been backwards, quarter truths, and flat out wrong. This is a frustrating read, but hey, perhaps the next few chapters will be better and less frustrating. Spoiler alert, they won't be! And with that, we have approached the end of part 1 of this review. Thank you all for watching, and if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Unexplained Possibilities content, and if you have a suggestion for a future review, let us know in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to check out part 2 of my review of Psychic Defense next week. Thank you all again for watching, and I will be seeing you for part 2.